How will AI impact your career? How will AI impact how you find your next job? How will it change the skills you need for your next job? What can you do now to prepare? We'll be exploring all of this and more on today's episode of AI Curious. My name is Jeff Wilser. I'm a journalist, I'm a human, and I'm curious about AI. And it is now time to address the massive elephant in the room. One of the biggest, trickiest questions about AI is, how will it impact the job market? And at one extreme, you have experts who think that eventually, perhaps all jobs can be replaced by AI, and our future could either be some robot overlord nightmare, or maybe some utopia where we're all free to live peaceful lives of abundance, spending our days writing poetry and playing tennis, or maybe reading poetry that's been written by AI. But today, I don't want to go there. I don't want to speculate about the far out future. Instead, I want to get a good sense of how AI is changing the career landscape and job market already, right now. And I wanted to have some advice for listeners for what you can actually do now to best prepare yourself career-wise for an AI-saturated future. So I am delighted to be joined by two experts who are in the thick of all of this, who are spending their days and nights thinking about careers and AI. That would be Dr. Joan Palmiter Bajorek, author of the new book, Your AI Roadmap, and host of the podcast also called Your AI Roadmap, and Stephanie Sindt, a career counselor and executive coach who has worked with recruiters at companies that range from Nike to IBM to Meta to JP Morgan. And she teaches a new course that feels relevant called How AI is Changing Getting a Job. And Joan, meanwhile, is an AI influencer who, in the face of AI layoffs, switched to entrepreneurship and now has built 22 income streams. 22! And she's been featured in Harvard Business Review, Forbes, VentureBeat, and on and on. And now she helps others navigate careers in this strange AI landscape. So again, the focus of today's conversation is today, the here and now, the pragmatic. We cover a ton of grounds. How AI is impacting the way that companies are hiring, what jobs people are shifting away from and shifting towards, what skills you can cultivate in your current job right now to keep you relevant in an AI future, or in other words, how to AI-proof your job, if that's even possible, and why good old-fashioned human networking is still relevant and maybe even more important than ever. We also cover something I didn't really expect, why building a personal brand might be even more important now than it used to be, whatever line of work you're in. You don't have to be a TikTok influencer for this to be important. You could be an accountant working in a traditional career trajectory, but a personal brand, thanks to AI, might matter more than it used to. So if you are someone who has a job or wants to get a job or wants to do some kind of work in any capacity, maybe in a gig economy, freelancing, whatever it is, whether you were just out of college or in the C-suite, I think you will find this conversation useful. Oh, and as an added bonus, Stephanie is giving listeners of this podcast a promo code for her new course, How AI is Changing Getting a Job. You can find that promo code in the show notes, and I believe it knocks off at least 30% from the price. With that, please enjoy my conversation with Stephanie Sindt, executive career coach, and Dr. Joan Palmiter Bajorek, author of Your AI Roadmap. Stephanie, Joan, welcome to AI Curious. So let's jump right in with a question that everyone is worried about in different ways. How would you say AI is impacting the job market and career landscape, like right now? Joan, let's start with you.
Oh gosh. Well, I am seeing, there's a lot of anxiety in the zeitgeist. I think it's the reality. We see all these layoffs happening. I see employers looking at smaller and smaller efficient teams. I'm looking at employees being like, do I belong here? Am I going to have an AI enabled company? Do I need to move? So I think on both the employer and the employee side, Stephanie can speak to the career hunters, but really everyone is experiencing these shifts. And is it real? Are we going to see shifts? I think we all think there will be, but how that actually is impacting our day-to-day today and our next days is a shifting landscape.
And we'll definitely get into those shifts in more detail for sure. Stephanie, how about you? What's your kind of top line of how you're seeing the impact like right now already?
I would say AI is impacting both career and hiring in really revolutionary ways. I've gone through this with a lot of people in a lot of different hiring markets, and I've really never seen anything like this. So from everything to what Joan was saying in terms of how people are finding employment and expecting what their next move is going to be, but it's also making these tremendous changes in terms of how hiring is impacted. So this is the biggest change that I've seen since the implementation of applicant tracking systems back in the day.
So I definitely want to unpack all of that in a bit. First, let's hear a little more about the specifics of what you are each doing with AI in careers, and that'll give us a perspective. And then we'll go into the advice for listeners and overall industry trends. Joan, your book and your course is called the AI Roadmap. What exactly is the AI Roadmap, and what's your top line advice you give to folks?
Absolutely. Well, as an AI influencer, so many people are in my DMs literally daily. How do I get into AI? I'm scared of AI. What do I do? And this book is specifically designing your AI roadmap, your personalized one, thinking about resilience in your personal brand, your network, and the humans who are going to get you the next job, and also your money. The whole second half of the book is about future-proofing your finances, which can be a taboo topic, but when you talk about a world where income is volatile, you need to be thinking about taking care of yourself, your family, your community. So that the book is about that. People really need help with personal branding. Seems like table stakes these days, but my course specifically, it's called Brand Builder 101, helps people step through how to set that up. If that's something that's not yet in your vocabulary, I strongly recommend it's part of your future.
And I'm making this up, Joan, but it's part of the idea that as AI becomes more mainstream and more saturated in the job market, a lot of skills might become homogenous or commoditized. And so if that's the case, if you have some AI entity XYZ that can do a job, one way to beat that is not just by offering more of a commodity, but by having your own distinguished, unique personal brand. So in that era, in that landscape, it's even more important to have a personal brand. And that might even be the case, even if you're still at a traditional job, you still want to have that brand to highlight yourself. Am I getting that right?
Absolutely. I just talked to a college student the other day who submitted like 300 applications. But when I looked at her CV, she looked like anybody else. How do you differentiate yourself? How do you get known for the work you've already done and stand out from thousands of applicants that may have similar backgrounds to you? And on the executive level, how are you known for your work? What professional presence do you have that can remember you? I literally got pinged about something. Someone knew me from 3 years ago. They could easily find me. They're like, oh yeah, that's the chick that works in AI and voice stuff. Make that connection. So being easily findable and known for the work you do, it seems like the obvious, but a lot of people aren't doing that.
Honestly, I hadn't even, until you popped on my radar, I hadn't even thought about the link between AI proliferation and the importance of like human branding. And they seem disconnected at first, but essential in this new era. Stephanie, how about you? You have a new course all about how AI is changing getting a job. Tell us a bit about kind of what some of the core lessons and takeaways are from that course.
First of all, AI really is changing how people are getting a job. And I think a lot of what this course goes over is really helping people figure out what it is that they're going to do. Because I think to what Joan was saying earlier, a lot of this can seem pretty scary, right? It can seem like a lot of this process is getting taken over, but there's a lot of tangible things that people can do. So number one, understanding how things like applicant tracking systems are really evolving and how it is that you can start to strategize yourself in that system. Two, LinkedIn's making a lot of changes. So being able to go in and start following companies that you're interested in so that you can start to get notified of jobs that could be interesting to you is something that you can start to do. The course also goes over chatbots. Chatbots are starting to make more of an appearance in the hiring scene, and some of the do's
Oh my
and
God,
don'ts
I even thought about
when you're interacting.
We all hate chatbots. That didn't even occur to me that freaking chatbots are entering the chat, if you will, to make things more complicated.
Yes. So there's lots of things that people should be looking out for as they're entering this new wave of hiring. But at the same time, there are these classic things that people need to do, which is that they need to really know what it is that you're going after in your career. Make sure that it's obvious to the people who you're trying to attract that that's what you're wanting to do and that that's on your documents. So both in your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, and to the real life humans who you talk to, that you're communicating that as well. So both within the space of AI and outside of it. And the course goes through all of this. So in less than an hour, you can be really up to date on what it is that you're supposed to do and walk away with 3 tangible strategies moving forward.
And one thing you mentioned right now is about, you mentioned old school human networking. And off mic earlier, we were discussing this. The irony is Stephanie and I actually met at a old school, well, I guess it was an AI conference. So there was AI involved, but it was a humans met in person at the Denver AI Summit. We met and connected there. Talk a bit about what extent in-person networking is still relevant and maybe even more relevant than in the past going forward.
Oh, it's hugely relevant. And number one, it always has been. And it's going to be, I think, even more so going forward. And in my business, I focus a lot with working on executives. And I can tell you within the job search, this is one area that hasn't changed as much. Within an executive job search, they're still really looking for recommendations. They're still really looking for people who know other people, and they're looking for those closer touches. And so if you are in the job market and you're looking for something, being able to know somebody at a company who can still recommend you. A lot of applicant tracking systems do have space for this. They have space for referrals, for spaces who can get you in. And the other thing that I recommend for a lot of people who are applying for positions, it's a really good practice to be applying within 7 days of a job posting. How are you going to know? And so having people who are at these organizations who you're targeting, where you would like to land, is one of the best ways that you can have for getting in, even in the age of AI. So being able to have this network of people who you're working with is one of the best ways that you can get after this.
Joan, how about you? How does in-person networking, where is it going to fit in your framework or the AI roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, the personal brand and who you know. It's wild to me to look at this research from LinkedIn that after COVID layoffs, 70% of people landed their next job based on an introduction. So we think about it as the side way of Tim getting me that opportunity, Sandeep, making that connection. Actually, the main way of 70% of people are using that effectively. So even when you're looking for an AI job, like there's such ironies of these layered pieces, right? I work in AI, but the real way I've gotten the biggest opportunities of my life are intros, DMs, who knows me. I even have a table in my book to round out the, who made that connection. But I think it's funny in this AI world, even if you're having, via Zoom or otherwise, it's those personal connections, even in the age of AI, that I think maybe are magnified. People don't want to always be in interaction with a chatbot. They really want to be that personable. Who is this person? Oh, I get to work with them. How fabulous, right? So the humanness being magnified.
It's almost like the human premium, or like, oh, okay, this person, I've seen them in person. I know. I've seen them hold a glass of water in their hands. There's almost this trust that you don't have with the chatbots. And Joan, you mentioned earlier shifts, and you're already seeing tons of shifts. Let's unpack that a bit. What specifically have you already started to see a shift in types of jobs that people are moving toward and then moving away from? And I'm curious, is that just at a younger, just at a college level? Or also are we seeing it at more senior executive level?
Yeah, the shifts are a little scary. It's not fun to talk about necessarily, but team size shrinking. I mean, I've seen these, software engineers and dev teams. How many do we need that are manually writing code if we generate quality code and have someone just debug it? I've seen literally dev teams shrink 70%. I know it's scary to say. And who do we need on the team? I see these investors here in Seattle being like, team of 3 people that make a unicorn? How exciting. But for employees, they're like, wait a minute, where do these jobs go? So I think as we think of what skill sets do we bring to the table, can we be entrepreneurs incubating AI products internally? Are there opportunities there? Is there a digital economy that we want to pivot to as far as income streams? Let's, I talk about in my book, but being really creative with what the future looks like for income and work.
Stephanie, have you seen any particular vocations or job titles you're seeing folks maybe being less interested these days? And there are any types of roles that folks are more interested these days?
First of all, I agree with Joan. I've seen a lot of the hits really happen within the tech industry. And I think the tech industry has probably been one of the places that I've seen that's been really susceptible to what's happening with AI and in some of the areas, and with some of those ultra technical roles has been an area that I've seen that's taken a bigger hit. I think the secondary thing that I'll talk about too, though, is that I think it's still pretty early days.
Yeah.
And so there were some initial things that we saw really early on. And my background's working in university career centers at business schools. And we thought, oh my gosh, it seems like this whole area is getting taken out, right? We were really concerned about marketing. And I just heard this story the other day where someone was telling me that they thought that they might have to potentially sell their marketing agency because it seemed like AI was going to take over all their roles. And this last year, they had their biggest year of business yet because they found that these people who were trying to use AI to write all of their marketing copy couldn't get any edge in the market. And all of those customers have now come back. I'm not saying that that's replacing all of the marketing jobs. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I do think that there's a lot of shifting that's going around right now, and people aren't quite sure what's going to get replaced and what's not. And I think for you, as someone in the market who's trying to manage your career, it's really important to be on top of this and on top of what's happening with your role and what's happening in terms of postings so that you can manage this and not be behind this.
No, that's a great point. Along those lines, one thing Joan mentioned earlier is maybe certain skill sets you can develop even at your current job, right? I'm guessing there are a lot of listeners out there who maybe they're not necessarily trying to like find some AI job, but they're like, okay, I am at a certain place in my career. I have been for a while. I have this sense, this looming sense that AI will be changing things in the future. To your point, Stephanie, no one quite knows how yet, but I should probably do some things now, maybe not dramatic or drastic, not a big career shift or change, but how can I hone some skills or develop skills to make me relevant in the future? Joan, what advice would you give along those lines, right? So even if folks don't want looking for a new job tomorrow, what can they do, whether they're just 2 years out of college or a vice president? What can they be doing to best they can, like AI proof their career, if you will?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd recommend to anyone is trying different tooling. I don't know if you've seen this graphic of people on a tree of like who's going to get chopped off first, the person not using AI.
Yeah.
So AI enablement for whatever job you're doing. For marketing, there's so many cool AI tools that can enable and get you amazing data on what's working. If you're using that tool, you're more efficient. I see a long career path for you as someone who checks it before it gets sent out on socials. If you work in the financial sector, are there things that can automate boring pieces of your job so that you can be the stakeholder presenting said data to stakeholders? I think that enablement and augmentation piece is tools anyone could check out. You can just ask ChatGPT. 5 tools in my sector, test them out, see if they're good, see if they're not, see if they're helpful internally, and make a business case for if they're helpful at all.
That's a great point. So it's a very concrete thing that it sounds so obvious. A lot of folks don't think of doing this, and I forget to myself all the time. But for listeners out there, you can literally say, just ChatGPT, like describe your job, describe your role, and say, I want to develop skills and also like low key show my managers that I am like an AI savvy person. I should be kept around. I should be thought of as an AI thought leader. What could I do? And just ask ChatGPT what you can do. And we'll give some good ideas and some bad ideas, but some good ones. Stephanie, how about you?
This is something that I've been working on with some of my executive clients, is that really getting a handle on what they're starting to get pitched in terms of software that's entering the space, because you might not know AI really well, but you can start to size up these tools that are coming into your particular area of expertise, what it is that you do, and how is AI getting applied to your field and what it is that you work in. And how can you start to understand how this is impacting you? Because one of the things that's going to start to happen is you're going to have to start to evaluate if you want to bring this tool into your business or not. And that is actually going to impact your career. How good of a job you did evaluating this AI technology and evaluating if you brought in a good tool to your organization. And even if you're not an executive and someone who's doing that, being able to start to get an idea of where is this technology going? Where should you be developing your skills? What are skills that maybe you don't need to develop as much anymore because it seems like AI might be taking those over? And what are other skills that might be really unique that you see on the path to going where you want to go? So maybe you're early in your career and you do see yourself wanting to get to an executive level, what are the things that you think are going to stick around no matter what? And so I think starting to get that sizing on those tools in the AI space is going to be really key.
That's really smart. And Stephanie, you earlier mentioned that AI is already changing the way companies recruit and hire. Can you share a little more specifics on what is changing already and then what advice you give people to handle those kind of new realities?
Absolutely. So right now, I think one of the things that should be helpful. So let's start at this base level of hiring in AI. So the LinkedIn talent survey that came out at the end of last year said that 27% of talent professionals are using AI in hiring today. So we are seeing it, but we're seeing it about a quarter of this activity in the marketplace. So we're starting to see it more and more. And I think it's coming down the pike with increased frequency. But one of the big areas that's changing that I think AI could be helpful with is AI has this promise to help with candidate rediscovery. And what that means is that if you interviewed at a company and maybe you didn't get hired, but you were a great candidate, they liked you, they wanted to bring you in, but you just weren't fit for this role that they had, AI has the ability to follow up with you as a candidate and ping you for a future role, potentially. That's what they're saying with this technology. Another way that AI is saying that they can help is by being able to engage with candidates who might be interested in the company and start to pre-match them with jobs. So this is not only something that they're looking at doing from applicant tracking systems, but also using this in terms of LinkedIn. And so these can be some interesting ways that AI could potentially work with job seekers. I think on a little bit more of something that might not be quite as positive, this candidate scoring within AI is getting a lot more intricate. And that's something that we're really going to just need to check the evolution of and see how that's really going to work. There is some focus on getting away from as many keywords and start diving into skills, but that's going to need to play out more in the market to see what that's really going to look like.
Interesting. And Joan, you mentioned income streams before, and to underline for listeners, you have 22 income streams now, thanks to AI. Obviously, we don't have time to go through each one individually, but I'd love to hear from you a bit about how that's important in your mind to develop income streams, even if you're not someone. I'm guessing a lot of listeners, they have traditional jobs. They in the future want traditional jobs. They don't want to try and have just 10 income streams, right? But why it might be worth people considering an income stream or two or three, even if you have a more traditional job.
Yeah, no one specifically needs 22. And honestly, I didn't know that I had that many until I wrote it up for the book. And we can find all of them in the book. I think, I talked to a game designer just the other day who loves her job, right? She loves being a game designer, but she's scared the AI is coming in. And if she loses that one income source, that's her only income source. I think a lot of people might be in that place. And we have this idea that you diversify your financial portfolio, strong recommendation, but we had almost no diversification on the other side, right? One income stream. So if you feel layoff anxiety, which Harvard Business Review thinks that maybe half of Americans feel layoff anxiety right now, consider what is a side hustle that you could pick up. They're a professional thing that you've loved, and maybe think about testing the waters, seeing if you can make an offer, seeing if that could be a more robust income stream. There are so many opportunities out there to test the waters. And I mean, it's really fun when I have some income streams that are building up. And I'm like, wow, that's a vacation. That's more stability for myself and my family.
As we wind down, last couple of questions. Stephanie, give us one thing about AI jobs and marketplace. What's one thing that concerns you? Maybe like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's like, okay, real talk. This is concerning. This keeps me up at night. Then what's something you're optimistic about? We'll start with you, then Joan, curious your thoughts on that too.
Okay. We're going rose and a thorn, huh?
Yep, we're gonna go. We're gonna start with a negative and let's leave the audience something relatively kind of sort of hopeful note to end on.
Okay. So something that concerns me is that having headcount is expensive.
Yeah.
And with the advent of AI, I think it's really tempting for employers to eliminate headcount and get rid of employees. And I hate to see that. Every time I see these layoffs happening and you see companies laying off a number of people, those were real people who had real jobs and who had real plans, maybe for their families, maybe for themselves as individuals attached to getting this job. And it's not small stakes for them to take this job with this company and to attach all these hopes to it. And it concerns me that with this advent of AI, that we might start to see this more and more. I think the thing that really gives me hope, though, is that I've worked with a number of recruiters and companies throughout my entire career, and a lot of candidates too. And I've never met a recruiter or a company who wasn't trying to hire great talent, who wasn't trying to really get it right. And the more research that I've done into these systems and what they're trying to do with AI, a lot of these advancements are actually more pro-candidate than they are anything else from what I can tell so far. And they have a promise of potentially speeding up the hiring process. They have the potential of matching more candidates with more jobs and doing things that could help move this along. And I think that if that could help candidates and it could help employers to get more of the right people in the right roles, I think that that would be fantastic, because that is what people are trying to do, is to get the right candidate hired.
See, there is some hope out there. And Joan, how about you? What concerns you? And then what's a kind of a shot of hope for us all?
Yeah, I think there's so many concerns, and I see a big, people's fear of being laid off, and small teams and grinding workers is something we become more efficient at our day jobs, and we just fill our time, right? These really chaotic workplaces. I think in my most hopeful version, we are more efficient. We have income streams and so forth and ideas, and we have more time off of screens to balance that out. I love a day when I get all my work done, I've hit my KPIs, and I can work out with my dog outside. How can we balance our lives, or a really different kind of what work and life look like is something I'm very hopeful.
Amazing. And then real quick, each of you going to give your best place to find you online and find your books and courses. Joan, what's the right URLs for everyone? I'll have links in the show notes as well.
YourAIroadmap.com is where you can find the book. You can find me. I'm all over, mostly LinkedIn. And I also have a podcast by the same name, Your AI Roadmap.
And Stephanie?
My website is simplifyyourcareer.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Stephanie Sindt, Sindt. And anyone who's listening to this podcast gets a promo code for a course that takes it from $99 to $60. And we will include that in the notes on the podcast as well.
Amazing. Very generous stuff. Exciting. Thank you both so much. Appreciate you adding some clarity to a very tricky, confusing topic. Thank you so much again. Best of luck to you. Enjoy the conversation. Well, there you have it. Thanks again to Dr. Joan Palmiter Bajorek, author of Your AI Roadmap and host of the Your AI Roadmap podcast, and Stephanie Sindt, career coach and instructor of the new course, How AI is Changing Getting a Job. And thank you to you, dear listener. A bit of housekeeping. If you're a regular listener of AI Curious, you might have noticed that we were off last week. That was due to a very funky technical bug that we have since fixed, and we should be back in action on our regular schedule. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe to AI Curious on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate it 5 stars or higher, send to a friend. Thanks again, and see you next time.